Hey, I'm David Banks. You're watching or listening to So Booking Cool.
So booking, so booking, so booking cool.
There's so much booking cool. So listen to So Booking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool, it's Jewel B. Today's guest is an actor, writer, producer. He's worked as a stand-up comedian, musician, and stuntman. He's done over 200 commercials. With more than 50 credits to his name and counting, he has appeared in many acclaimed and hit releases in movie and television, including Sweet Valley High, The Nutty Professor 2, The Parkers, LA Forensics, Why Women Kill, Insecure, After Party, Station 19, and the new season of Never Have I Ever, just to name a few. He is also the author of the book, How to Make a Living as a Commercial Actor. Tips to give you an almost unfair advantage in the auditioning game. Here with us today, he is David Banks. Stay tuned for our conversation only on So Booking Cool.
Hey there, how are you? That's a heck of an intro.
David, you've been at it for a while. Did you know that you wanted to be an entertainer?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, music was always kind of first at the top of the list as far as being a really loud and obnoxious drummer. And I kind of shifted that aside and went to and I don't even know, it's been so many years, I don't remember how I made that shift. It's just been like, wow, okay, I guess I'll somehow fall into this little zone. But yeah, 22 years later, crazy.
So you do music too?
Yeah, well, I originally moved to LA to go to MI, Musicians Institute, PIT. And then when the I guess they called it the Seattle grunge theme came in and knocked out that whole fun 80s era of the metal that I was really into, it wasn't all that appealing anymore. I was like, I'm not really into this whole depressing grunge era. So I quickly made a shift and cut my hair and decided to dive into commercials, and then from there on, kind of TV and film.
You've done 100 commercials, right? Or more, hundreds?
Yeah, a little over that now, which is just, and again, it's so funny when a friend of mine just said, because we all have our little moments of peaks and valleys and ups and downs, and I call it the roller coaster from hell. And he said something last week, and he goes, it really is like catching lightning in a bottle. You know, it's one of those things where it hits, you're on fire, you're doing great, and then you could have a week, a month, a few months, several months with zero, nothing, and then it kind of hits again, but it really keeps you in check and keeps you humble and keeps you grounded. So when you're not working, you really appreciate the times when you are. So I get just as excited now for a booking than I did 20 plus years ago.
Wow, yeah, because you're a pro, David. So what do you do during those times that you're not getting the work or getting the roles? What does an actor do during that time?
Naps, a lot of rest. A lot of rest, a lot of music, a lot of going to the beach, a lot of just kind of, I guess, distracting myself from all the waiting game, so to speak, because I think that can really take a toll on your mind. It's just that whole waiting thing, and it took me years to really be able to just do that, just do nothing. There's that old saying, and a friend of mine told me this years ago, and I'll never forget, because my mind would always kind of play tricks on me and say, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you working? And that old saying of don't just sit there, do something. He goes, in your case, don't just do something, sit there. He goes, enjoy the silence, enjoy those moments of doing nothing. He goes, because it's gonna come back around, and when it does, you better be ready to get on that roller coaster ride again and go up and, get sick, take the highs, take the lows, take the exciting ride and take the twists and turns. But there's gonna be a time when, again, it's those moments of just absolutely nothing. And I'm really kind of just starting to enjoy those moments now of nothing.
Speaking of that, what are your impressions about the pandemic, the earlier times of the quarantine?
That's a great question. You know what? It's interesting because I have a friend of mine told me, he's a mechanic, and his clients, and he talks to several people a day. He says, on one end, he goes, I've got half of my clients that are thriving, doing better than ever, killing it, crushing it, taking on new ventures, doing amazingly well. He goes, the other half of my clients are barely able to put food on the table. And it's nuts. He goes, I've seen the best and the worst. And I think it really took a lot of us, obviously, by storm. And it took a lot of us to really kind of shake us up and say, listen, I better do something else. Or I could just sit around and really do nothing and get scared. I think I decided to do something totally different. I went to the gym every single day. I tried to kind of just raise those endorphins and feel better, not worry about the business if and when it was ever going to come back. I figured at some point it might, just to kind of clear my headspace and put me in a better place. And then all of a sudden they started this whole magic new thing of self-taping, doing what we're doing now, Zoom auditions, Zoom callbacks. They were booking off self-tapes. It was a wonderful thing because all of a sudden you would go from being this actor that was going out, 1 to 2 to 5 times a day, driving all over town, just taking a toll on what we talked about earlier, traffic, getting caught in that traffic. And before you know it, you're on the road for spending your entire day on the road, changing your clothes in the car, going from, doctor to cop to quirky neighbor to you name it, and getting home and being like, oh my gosh, what? I just spent the entire day in traffic, driving from one place to another with, some days are better than other with little, I don't want to say little to no results, but when it's your time, you pick up a booking here, you may not get many of them, but to be able to do all this from home has been one of the nicest, the biggest blessing for me. It really kind of just, wow. Now I'm able to kind of just roll out of bed, put on a suit, do my thing, go back to bed if I want to, or go to the gym or whatever. And it was kind of a nice treat. And a lot of them have shifted and just gone self-tape now. A small handful have gone back to normal. I just had one this morning where I had to drive to Hollywood, very normal. But I got a little spoiled being able to do a lot of it from home. And like I said, it's been one or the other. It's been a lot of people have just decided, hey, I've got to move back home. This isn't working. I think, but the ones that stuck it out and decided to stay here and make the best of it have been, seeing some good things happen out of it. So it's been pretty good.
Love to hear that. Wow. So self-tapes are when you film your own audition for a role?
Yes. You could just basically send in the best version of what, you read the script, you do a couple takes. Sometimes they want multiple takes. Sometimes they just want one. But the nice thing is you're given more than just one opportunity in front of a casting director to do your thing. You pick the best version of yourself. You send it in, you edit it, send it in. I try to send it in within an hour. I know it sounds kind of nuts, but instead of waiting for the deadline, I would send it in immediately. Sometimes casting can make up their mind right away instead of being the guy or girl who waits to the last minute and sends it in a couple days later or even late, asking for a window. I like to get it in right away, and at least that way you can kind of forget about it and go back to normal and not worry about, think and rethink and overthink. What should I do? How should I do this? How should I deliver this? It's been a kind of a nice way to really just, again, pick the best version and send it in and absolutely just forget about it, because obviously, again, if you think about it too much, it never happens. But if you, give it your best version and just put it out there and forget about it, it's kind of it's been a nice little way to go about this whole thing. The new version, I should say.
That's awesome, David, that you have such a quick turnaround time. I also heard that when it comes to the Cameo videos, you're also quick with getting those back to people, which, by the way, your Cameo videos are hilarious.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, again, it's one of those things where boredom kind of took over during the pandemic, and I'm like, let me just do some cameos, and it's been fun. And you get people that are, you're roasting people for their 70th birthday, you're roasting someone who might have just got fired, divorced, broke up, whatever. It's just been, some people can be pretty harsh. I was having to tame a few of them down. Like, hey, can you really drill into ream into my father? Who I'm like, well, I don't want to get too mean, but yeah, let's have some fun.
Yes, I saw those. How did you find out about Cameo?
I was actually on Instagram and I saw these things pop up in my feed. I'm like, oh, and I saw some of my favorite roast masters on there just drilling into people. I'm like, oh, wow, you mean you can get paid to just roast someone? This sounds kind of fun. Mm-hmm. So why not? Yeah.
You take hours a day getting ready. Busy plucking those tiny little eyebrows of yours, huh? Yeah, and styling that bald head of yours. Why?
Who was the first person, by the way, to tell you that you were talented?
Oh, geez, there wasn't too many of them in the beginning. I was hearing more of the, what are you thinking? What are you doing? You're crazy. What? You're not funny. But I think it was always my mother who was the one that was kind of just, cheering me along. I'd say my best cheerleader. She was always kind of giving me the pep talks. You got this. You can do it. You know how competitive it is. But look at the, someone just pointed out today. I think his name is Harold Gould. Didn't make it until he was in his 50s. I think Morgan Freeman was the same way. Didn't get his first film until mid 40s. Michael Richards the same way. A lot of these cats never really got noticed until much later in life. And that was kind of always a nice thing to hear in the back of your mind, like, okay, so there is hope. Because back in the day, there was the old saying of like, oh, if you hadn't made it by the time you're 30, give up, quit, you're expired, you're done. And that always kind of haunted me. But when you hear the stories of these guys that kept plugging along, kept taking no with a grain of salt and just saying, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna keep doing my thing no matter what the outcome is. And eventually something's gonna land, something's gonna stick. And I think that, we're all given little signs from God that we're doing the right thing, that we're, hey, you're on the right track. It may not look like it right now, but I've got some bigger plans for you down the line, as long as you just don't quit. And that seemed pretty easy to me. I figured the older I get, what am I gonna do at this point? Now I'm thinking of like, retirement sounds kind of nice, but I think it's just one of those things where you just keep plugging along and you see the pool of people that are kind of in the same world, and it's getting smaller and smaller. And many of them are just saying, hey, I'm done, I'm burned out, I'm tired, I'm getting a little, it's too much. And I think we all get that in every aspect of our work. We always think, gosh, this is, wow, what am I doing? Can I keep doing this? Should I keep doing this? Am I doing the right thing? But then, like I said, God steps in, gives you a nice little reward, little treat here and there. And it's like, oh, I guess I am doing the right thing.
With all of the projects that you have done, which one would you say challenged you the most?
Ooh, it's a great question. I think more of the dramatic things that have been coming along lately, because I've considered myself just to be kind of more on the comic side, but lately I've been seeing a little bit more of the, as they call it, playing it straight, just the very real kind of guy. I've had a few lately that have been like, freaking out, bawling, crying. I'm like, oh geez. So those kind of challenges are nice, and I really respect and admire some of these guys that really have it in them to just bring that. I never realized how intense some of this can be. And again, when you're competing with some of these guys that are just really, and they can, when I say bring it, that are just bringing the tears, the snot, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, you had to go somewhere dark. And that to me is kind of a nice little fun new challenge.
Yeah, because you do so well in comedy, but of course because you have done drama. You've done drama.
I have, yeah, and I've always been a little insecure with it, only because of, I guess, going to Groundlings and doing the stand-up thing and trying to be funny and all that stuff, and then you finally feel like you're kind of like, oh, maybe I am kind of funny in a weird, quirky, odd way, and then someone throws something else entirely different at you as far as the drama thing. I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But then I started watching a lot of my favorite actors, like the Jim Carreys and the Ben Stillers, all these cats that are obviously phenomenal in their comedy chops, but can also really bring it when it comes to drama. And it's, Jamie Foxx, another one that can really just heavy hit on both sides. And it's just like, wow, geez. I think it's always tough. Your mind automatically goes towards, I think it was Jamie Foxx that started doing, strict comedy back in Living Color and all that stuff. And then when he tried doing drama, it was almost as if no one really took him serious in the beginning because they just saw him as that funny guy. And it took him quite a while to really just kind of prove his chops. And all of a sudden he got so good at it. You can't ignore it. You can't keep talent like that a secret. For someone to be able to cross over, like, to me, it's incredible. Very impressive.
You mentioned Jim Carrey, Ben Stiller, and Jamie Foxx. What were roles or projects that you saw that blew you away, David?
Ooh, it was the one with Jim Carrey doing Time on Maple Drive was just like, oh my gosh. And it's funny because that was actually before he got all the Mask and Liar Liar and Ace Ventura. Well before that, it was him and Billy McNamara, and he played this, just this really the guy was breaking down in every scene, and I'm like, oh my gosh. In watching that, you would have never guessed this guy had any comedic chops, because he was so convincing in this role, and I was like, oh my gosh. And when I revisited it, I saw it actually after I'd seen, like I said, The Mask and Liar Liar and Ace Ventura. So it really threw me off. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this little hidden gem? Where did this come from? But to me, I'll never forget just being in awe of the entire movie, because it's just something you just don't expect and you don't see. So that to me was always one of those moments where I'm like, okay, I want to do that,
Yeah, what attracts you to a project?
The writing, the comedy. It's you see these roles where it's almost like, oh my gosh, this is written for me. This is amazing. The words just come off the page, and you're able to really just let loose and then create your own type of character, and then add to it by adding your own little version of yourself. I think it's always the writing, something that you see, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then you look and you dig deeper. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, this is the guy that wrote whatever, this and this and this. Now I get it. This is why it's so good. And those are always the fun ones for me.
Are you a fast reader when it comes to the scripts?
No, I'm terrible. I'm one of those guys that has to reread it. I think my ADHD is all over the page, and I'll read like a half a paragraph and notice that I've drifted off and thought about, like, what am I going to eat tonight? Oh, that bill is due. Oh my gosh. Oh, I haven't called my mom. Let me call my mom right now. Hold on. So my mind is all over the place. So it takes a little bit longer for me to really lock down. That's why it's super important for it to be something that really stands out and gets me, because if it's something that's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe like an older Western, I'm just like, okay, my mind starts drifting into some other land, anywhere but here where I need to be reading. So it's a little difficult. I have some friends that are just really, really good at it, and they just lock in and they're honed in. They can look at it one or two times and be off book. That is so far from me. I wish it was, but it's not.
Well, how much time do you have to read it?
It depends. There's some films allow you a little bit more time. TV can be a little bit quicker, especially if I try to get it in, like I said, really quick. So that's always a little bit of a struggle. So I usually just kind of lock myself in my room, shut the phone off, and just dial in and just really force myself to get off book with it, so I can be as prepared as I possibly can. Because like I said, I don't have that gift like many do. And there's a couple guys that I'm just in awe, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I saw you just read it, and you've gone over it like once, maybe twice, and it's nailed. And I'm like, man, what kind of ginkgo are you taking? What are you doing for the mind to make it that sharp? Give me your secret, because I need it,
Well, what would you say is your gift, specifically, like with all of the acting, besides your performances?
You know what? It surely isn't talent. I'm going to say just tenacity and just the drive and to keep going. No matter how many times I hear the word no, it just kind of fuels me to want to get that next yes. It really is probably I'd call it a sickness, I think, because it's almost, I can never really enjoy the booking, because I worry about the ones that got away, the ones I didn't get, and why didn't I get it? And I should have tried something different, maybe taken a different chance or choice, or, and it's weird. And again, it's my own little thing I'm fighting in my head, where I'm like, oh, why didn't I do this? Or, I wonder why I didn't get that one. I mean, it haunts, versus me being appreciative of the one that I just got. I should probably learn to focus more on that. So I think it's probably just the drive to keep going,
Where does that drive come from?
Hearing no so many times. Just being told no. I mean, and that's the thing in this business. No one really ever tells you no. You just don't hear back. I remember one time I got a call, and this is several years ago, and I thought I did a great job in the room. It was awesome. I was almost waiting for that phone call to say, hey, you got it. And they ended up calling a day later, and I was like, oh, here it goes. I saw the number on the caller ID. I'm like, oh, right on, here it is. Hey, listen, David, we're calling to tell you, we loved your read. Everything was great. Just want to let you know that we're going a different direction. We chose someone else. I'm like, wait a minute, what? okay. But I'm thinking to myself, you don't need to call me to tell me that. If I don't hear, I just don't hear. I mean, I didn't say that, but I was just almost left like, what? This is odd. And I remember just like, oh my gosh. And that happened one time, but it was one of those things where again, I'm like, huh. So I'll always remember times like that keep it real, that keep it really like, okay. And you always hear the stories of the actor that was sleeping in his car, that was just about to go back home. I think it was even like Wonder Woman that was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm moving back home. And then they get the call and then they book it. And it's, again, one of those gifts that it's telling you, oh, okay, I'm in the right place, I'm doing it. Because we all have so many of those stories where it's just, maybe not for us. What are we thinking? We must be crazy. And in all accounts, if you think about it, we really are a little crazy to choose this for a career anyway. It's, we're not all there. All the screws aren't really fastened tightly to do something like this and call this a career. And I, to this day, still kind of feel weird. Someone asked this morning, just in conversation, guys, that's what we do, oh, what do you do? And I just usually say something else, like, oh, I work from home. And if they pry more, oh, what do you do from home? Self-employed, self-employed doing what? And I'm like, oh, jeez. Because in the beginning, we're all dying to say, I'm an actor. And then, and then they ask you, what have you done? Anything I might have seen? And then you're like, no, nothing. And then when you finally do get those somethings, you really don't want to talk about it. You just kind of want to keep it low. And I don't know, it's just, it's a weird, funny thing. But again, it's all part of, I guess, getting older. And the more you do this, as they say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But you take all those things in account and just, like I said, keep doing that run.
Wow, that is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, David, of course. Like you're dropping a lot of nuggets here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, I think it's all the mistakes and the lessons I've learned. And I don't know, I always say if I could help shave off a year or two off anyone that might be listening, it's I don't know. I had a few really good people growing up telling me, kind of not showing me the ropes or anything, but just kind of, again, giving you that little extra motivation that I needed to keep going. Because there were definitely some times where I'm like, this is not it. I've got to be doing something else. And then you hear the right words of wisdom come in from someone, a complete stranger, telling you their story. And I'm like, my gosh, it's like when you go to church and you hear the pastor talking about something that totally relates to you. And there's a reason why you're there on that Sunday. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from someone that, again, that was in the same position I was in, equally as frustrated, equally exhausted with the business of some sort. And then someone just gives you that little word, a little nugget, and telling you, hey, you're doing the right thing. You're good. You're golden. I'm like, wow. Okay, thank you. Wow, you don't know how much that means. And it does mean a lot. Because again, we all have a different journey. We all have our different struggles and the path we might have gone down. And you do hear the stories sometimes of the guy that got lucky and got discovered at the mall because he's so great looking, whatever. I mean, I don't buy into that, but it does happen. And props to them. It's very, very lucky. But that certainly wasn't the case for me or anybody I know at all.
Do you have any thoughts when it comes to social media stars getting roles and opportunities? Because I know that comes up a lot in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings with that. I think if the talent is there, the merit's there, if you've got the chops and again, the dedication and the drive, there's nothing wrong with that. You've got in somehow. But to just get in because of your social media presence, that's always kind of bugged me a little bit. But I guess, I understand they're under the gun too. They probably are looked at in a different light. People probably think, oh, wait a minute, this is the TikTok guy. You better be good. Oh, you stink. So I guess I'm certain that they're under a lot of pressure as well. And I try to respect that. But I have a little bit more admiration for the ones that have really just struggled up the ladder, done their years of theater and improv and or stand-up, and hearing the word no, not just getting in because you've got 1 million followers because of some cat video you posted. I don't know. I mean, it's, again, I don't want to be too cruel and too mean because I'm sure a lot of them are wonderful. But for me, anyway, it's a tough, and when you start calling them influencers and stars, I'm just like, really? So I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh, but I'm all about the one that have really done their hard time, gone through the nose, the struggles and all that stuff. That to me is a better story in the end, in my opinion.
I want you to tell us the best quality in these different roles. So what's the best quality in an actor?
For me, 100% hands down, being humble. You always hear these stories. Today I heard a guy say, and I forget who he was talking about, but he's coming out of Ralph's, this grocery store here. And I don't know why he told me this. He goes, do you know what? You'll never guess who I just met. I just met Mark Hamill's stunt double, and he was so awesome and so nice. You always hear these stories about how nice someone is, how gracious they were, how full of gratitude they were, and how they took a few extra minutes to really just listen and engage and be nice, versus the ones where my wife told me a story where, and I won't mention the name, but she always brings it up because when she's on TV, she goes, I don't want to watch this anymore. Change the channel. I'm like, what is your thing with this girl? She goes, oh, I met her at the Roosevelt a couple years ago, and she was so mean, so arrogant. I asked just to take a picture because I was a huge fan. And she said, no, not now, honey. Next time. And it really rubbed her the wrong way. And I said, you know what? I can see that. And that's got to be frustrating. And what was that old saying? You never want to meet your idols or your people because you're probably going to be let down, which is kind of a bummer. And when you do meet the ones that are really nice, I can't stop hearing about like Henry Winkler, about how I just saw someone was tweeting yesterday, like, oh my gosh, the nicest guy. And then he'll stop and talk. He's been married for X amount of years and this and that, and just the sweetest guy. I love hearing stories like that because there really is a shortage of those type of girls and guys in this business. Because a lot of it, like I said, does get to your head. The overnight success stories that think this is the way it is, and I'm going to treat people the way I want to be treated, the way I want. And that's never nice. I never want to in someone's space and never be like, hey, and I'm not one of those guys anyway that's like, oh my gosh, can I get a picture? At least not with actors. I'm more that way with musicians. And, if I see guys that I really love and grew up admiring, I might be like, hey, can I get a picture? Because I really, but even then sometimes you get someone on the wrong day that's just, nope, a little arrogant, little mean. You remember that for the rest of your life. And I think as a child, when you meet someone like that and they take that extra, an extra step just to be a little nice, that to me is the number one quality that an actor should have. But unfortunately, they don't all have that quality, which is a bummer.
Definitely. What about the best quality in a writer and in a director?
Ooh, you know what? I think the best quality is understanding what it takes and what it is like. For example, if I'm working with a director who is also an actor, I love that. So they know not to put too much on your plate. And then you get someone that is just a director that doesn't act. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them tend to kind of throw a lot of stuff at you, thinking you can do this, right? You're a robot, you got this. Versus the actor director that understands, hey, there's a lot that goes into this. I know it might take you a while to shift gears here. I've had some directors throw a phone book worth of dialogue at me. Okay, go. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Hold on, give me a second. Let me just hold on. Okay, okay, good, got it. And action. No, hold on. So it is really tough to just take the wheel and just go for it. So I do love the ones that understand that and give you a little extra time and not just throw a ton at you. But it's also a challenge too. It's also nice to be, okay, how am I gonna, I had one experience during the pandemic. It was probably towards the tail end of it, and I hadn't worked in a minute. And we were on set at the studio outside in the hot sun going on like the 10th hour. My brain was just fried. What little dialogue I had for this, I remember it just wasn't working. It wasn't computing. It wasn't going to the brain. And if it did, it would go for a second, then I'd lose it. And I was so embarrassed, and this had never happened. And there was like 80 extras. It was a scene with myself and Ed Helms, and I saw the shift in his eyes, kind of like, oh, David. You know what I mean? Almost like I'm letting people down. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And the more you get in that zone, you get a little nervous. You get kind of, you're a little terrified. You're in the hot sun. Your brain is just not functioning. It's really hard to kind of pick up and just fire away at that point. because you're just so like, okay, just get me home. And things like that, again, they happened for a reason. They needed to happen. Because after that, I remember that drive home was so brutal because I was just, oh, David, what are you doing? What is wrong? You need to go back to class. And none of us are too good to think we don't need class, or to think we don't need improvement or brushing up on something, or go to an improv thing, something, get up in front of people, get your chops even tighter, because we all, no matter how good we think we may be or prepared we may be, we're gonna lose it at some point. And there's nothing more frustrating, because I'm the kind of person that, again, I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to keep anybody there longer than they need to be, especially in this situation. It was, again, we were in the hot sun going on our 10th hour, and I just wanted to get home, and I just wanted to deliver the dialogue and get it, but they kept changing it and adding and tweaking, and I'm like, oh boy, we're working with a director that's not an actor. What do I, and so my mind really went woo for a second. But again, that, for whatever weird reason, that needed to happen to kind of bring me back down and to David, you got this. But you need to get a little bit sharper in certain things.
Wow. So on a set, do you have opportunities to come back the next day and say, that wasn't my best? Or is it always expected for you to give your all every day on set?
Yeah, it's pretty much expected. And if you don't, there's someone else right around the corner that you probably fought to get that position, that job. And I always say, it's not about talent, usually, or merit, the person I get. It's just, a lot of it can be luck. A lot of it can be timing. A lot of it can be a look. If they've already cast my son in the spot, and actor A doesn't look anything like him, but I might, or and vice versa. There's been plenty of times where I've seen the finished result, something I tried out for and didn't get. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. The son looks nothing like me. That guy does. And it's funny. It's not that I go out hunting and looking for these things, but I, for some reason, I don't know why, I always, whenever I'm watching TV, I see every spot, every commercial that I auditioned for and didn't get, which is also very humbling. I'm like, that would have been a fun one. Darn it. Oh, well, at least he got it. Maybe that guy was living in his car the day before. I don't know. Maybe his story is a little bit darker. Maybe he needed it more than I do. So I really don't give it much thought more than that. But it is kind of, sometimes you see it like, oh, okay. So again, it boils down to, a lot of it isn't really just, you not being good enough or whatever. It's just, again, a lot of it is timing and luck, like I said. But yeah.
What makes the best comedian? Because that's what you do too.
Ooh, you always hear these stories about how they have this rough upbringing or this really dark past. And gosh, I've been watching this show on Vice right now about comedians. I think the first episode was Chris Farley, then it was Dice Clay, then it was Artie Lang. Many of them had kind of a troubled past to some degree. And I think it's what made them who they are. You always hear the stories of, again, maybe an abusive childhood, maybe being picked on in school, maybe being bullied every day. And they somehow kind of escaped and got out of that and used that. So I think some of the best comedians can really have some, I don't want to say a troubled past, but can really have some things that were pretty haunting growing up. And I love that. You don't hear about too many actors that are like, hey, I had the best childhood. Everything was great. I had a silver spoon in my mouth. It was amazing. And now look at me. It's even better. You don't hear too many of those stories. Granted, they're out there, but you hear more and more of the stories about how people came from, really just came from the bottom and worked themselves up. And that just makes for a better story in the end anyway. But I think, to your question, I really do think that some of the ones that really went through a lot growing up and stuff. And I was always kind of a quiet kid growing up. I really didn't have a lot of friends growing up until I think it was my senior year. For some reason, I kind of broke out of my shell and figured, hey, what the hell do I have to lose? This is my last year in school anyway. Let me just be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more obnoxious and loud and weird and funny. If it doesn't work, what's it gonna hurt? I don't have a lot of friends anyway at the time. And then it just kind of hit. And I remember kind of changing my look a little bit too, cutting my hair. And, a few people saying, oh, are you a new student? Where'd you come from? I'm like, no, I've been here what do you mean? I've been here for years. What are you talking about? But I think it's just that, and I really, growing up, it was weird because, again, just kind of isolating myself in my bedroom and playing my music, playing my drums every day, and versus going out and being social and going to events and parties with my friends. That wasn't really the thing for me. I was so determined to make it in the music thing. I was just in my room practicing my chops, practicing my rudiments and my drum skills. I'm playing to Rush albums with some of my favorite, artists and drummers, and Steve Smith and Neil Peart. And then, like I said, something just clicked senior year, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what it's like to have people around and friends. So which was kind of odd, but yeah, so I was definitely a late bloomer when it came to that.
Would you say that you felt like life got better once you became more social?
I wouldn't say better, but because I didn't really know what to compare it to, but I'd say it was a little more exciting. I'm like, this is kind of nice. The phone's ringing. Wow. It was definitely different for me. And my brother was always the one that was a little bit more outgoing and just real funny and friendly and had all the friends. But yeah, I guess, you know what, bottom line is, I guess it gave me a little bit more confidence. I figured, hey, this is kind of cool. I can get up in front of people and talk to people. I mean, which obviously happened for a reason, because there would have been no way I could have transitioned being that guy into being an actor and getting up in front of people. I think that's kind of why I started, even though I was terrible at it. I was probably one of the worst comedians, but I tried it to kind of break the nerves, get up in front of people, and just get rid of that shaky, stiff, nervous, dry-lipped, oh my gosh, freaked out, terrified feeling. I think it was Billy Crystal that said, any chance you get, any opportunity you get to take, get up in front of an open mic, take it, do it. If someone says, hey, we're doing an open mic, go, do it. It'll just help your chops. You'll get more comfortable. You'll get more confident. You'll be a little bit more calm. So I try to transition that into the room of auditions and callbacks. And so, if you've got the ad agent, the writer, the client, the producer, the director, the casting director, the session director, the ad agent, whatever, whoever's in the room, you're going to be a little bit more at ease. If you've done if you've done your time on stage and all that kind of stuff too. And that to me was the biggest thing, because I was just, again, terrified, because I kept going back to that kid growing up with just very much in my own world, not a lot of friends kind of thing. So I kept kind of going back to that guy, which was probably not the best thing, but yeah.
Yeah, because I was also going to say, it seems like your work, like you probably did not have much of a social life, but you were in your own world and you were like really productive, you were creative, you developed a great work ethic. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I wasn't sidetracked doing a lot of other things. Not that it was a bad thing, but I had, I saw some people in my high school that were off doing, some kids come to class on mushrooms or like totally stoned and high and baked. And I'm like, whoa. And that always terrified me growing up. I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh. So I didn't really, fall into that zone, which was good. So I think it kept me out of trouble. And it did, like you said, kind of help me focus on what I wanted to. And I think that's the toughest thing too, being an Aries with ADHD. It's kind of a curse, because I would do all these, but I was just committed to one thing, and that was a struggle, that was a challenge. But it really got me good at drumming and stuff, because I was just determined to do this, to get this, this paradiddle down, or whatever, this drumming chop, or this funky odd time rhythm kind of thing down. And I would practice. I would beat on the refrigerator, on the halls, on the walls, on the steering wheel on the way to class. My mom driving me to school, and it was obviously my poor mother. Props to her for putting up with me, because it was just, oh my gosh, I was probably the loudest, obnoxious guy. But again, being into that, focused on that, when I shifted it to the acting thing, it was the same kind of thing. I really try to put that level of dedication and intensity into that, even though, like I said, I didn't really necessarily have the talent or the chops or the improv ability. I figured I've got to really just dial this in so I can become, at some point, get my, 10,000 hours before you make it into anything that's decent. And that to me was like, wow. When I heard that, I'm like, gosh, 10,000 hours before you really start to kind of make any sort of headway and progress. But I count those hours as, auditioning, doing the stand-up, going to classes, doing the improv, doing the self-tapes. We've all, at some point, we'll hit our 10,000 hours, and you'll notice things start to just kind of shift, and the callbacks will become more and more in your favor. The bookings will become more and more, and the relationships that you make with cast and directors and so forth, and producers become better. And the more they get to know you and see what you're able to do. I love that. And again, I love seeing people that are up there getting their awards, and they're talking about how hard they had it and how many hours they put in. Some are more than 10,000. I would love to have a little, I would pay money to have a little counter or something on my phone that says, okay, you're now at 22,000 hours, David. You know what I mean? That'd be amazing, but because I'm sure it's up there with all the stuff we do along the way.
David Banks, everyone. David, I loved talking with you. Would love to talk with you again. I'm probably going to send some follow-up questions for you, okay?
Awesome. Looking forward to it. It's been a blast talking to you. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm glad that we got to do this. It was a pleasure, okay?
You too. It's amazing. And enjoy the rest of your day out there. It's like almost 7 out in New York right now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's almost 8. Mm-hmm.
Almost 8. Oh my gosh, never mind. Okay, yeah, you're right. Jeez.
Yes, but it was great. People can keep up with you on social media, right? David Banks.
Yeah. My handle on Twitter and Instagram is Dynamite Dork.
Okay, Dynamite Dork. There we go. And I'll have that up here for everybody to follow. And make sure you check out David's book, How to Make a Living as a Commercial Actor, wherever books are sold, as well as the Audible version. Thank you again to all the listeners and viewers. Until next time, so booking cool.
Been a blessing.